Welcome to episode 143 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Corey Mandell, who's been on the podcast a couple of times before. I'm going to link to those episodes in the show notes. We dig in today into television writing, and Corey tells us what he thinks you should be writing if you're looking to break in as a television writer. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 143. I just want to mention a free webinar that I'm doing on Wednesday, September 28th, 2016 at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's called How to Effectively Market Your Screenplay and Sell It. I'm going to go through all the various online channels that are available to screenwriters and give you my unfiltered opinion of them. I get questions all the time like, does the blacklist work, or should I use Inktip, or which contest should I enter? I've tried pretty much every marketing channel available to screenwriters, and I'm going to share my experiences with them. And again, this webinar is completely free. Don't worry if you can't make it to the live event. I'll be recording this event, so if you sign up, you'll get a link to the recorded event even after it happens. And I'll keep this going pretty much forever. So if you're listening to this podcast well after the webinar date, no worries. You can still get the recorded event emailed to you by signing up. To sign up, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. And free webinar is all lowercases and all one word. So it's sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. Of course, I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Also, if you're already on my email list, if you already get emails from me, you don't need to re-register for this. I'm going to email everybody on my list. I'm going to email them the information so that they can attend the webinar as well. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. Once again, the main thing I'm trying to push through is post-production on my crime action thriller film, The Pinch. I did get a look last week at the first 33 minutes of the film, so, you know, a little more than a third. It's just a rough cut, but it's definitely coming together nicely. I've mentioned this a number of times. I'm really trying to stay focused on quality over getting it done quickly. It's taking my editor a bit longer than we expected, but he's doing a great job. So I'm just trying to give him the time and the space to get the absolute best rough cut possible. Right now, I'm thinking the film probably won't be done until early next year. You know, conservatively, March seems like a pretty realistic date. But again, I'm not too worried about it if it takes a little longer. Hopefully, it'll be less than that, more the January, February timeline, but if it takes me till March or longer, I'm just not going to worry about it. As I said, I just want to give the different people working on different aspects of the film, I just want to give them the time and the freedom to just really do the best job that they can possibly do. I'm working on the website for the film, so hopefully I'll have that up in the next week or so. I think for the time being, I'm just going to use my current SYS Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube accounts since I already use them regularly and have a built-in audience. For something like The Pinch, I feel like creating a whole other set of accounts to manage would be too much. And so I'm just going to use the ones I have, and people can follow along that way. A lot of the updates that I'm going to start making will be about The Pinch once we start, you know, promoting the film, getting into film festivals, all that kind of stuff. As I release, you know, the next week or two, release the website, I'll just be pushing that stuff out to my SYS Twitter and Facebook and YouTube channels. So if you use Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, please do like those accounts, or in the case of YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and you'll be able to just get regular updates, all the links and stuff as it comes through, pictures, you know, anything that I have related to The Pinch, I will be releasing through those various channels. So in terms of screenwriting, I'm still outlining the rewrite. I mentioned this last week. I'm going back and I'm rewriting an older script. It's probably 15 years old, and I kind of went back and read through it, and it had some stuff that I liked. It just feels very dated now after, 15 years. So I'm going back, kind of try and give it a fresh update. I'm putting up some pages in my writers group next week. So that's kind of my deadline. I want to get the first 25 pages in order this week so that I'm ready to present them next week. So I've really got to start digging in and get those whipped up into shape. But I've got I've got the script basically stripped down. I went back and created an outline of the entire script and starting to move things around, cross scenes out, add in new signs just in the outline form. And I've kind of got that ready to go. So now I've got to go into the actual script and rearrange and write a couple new scenes and tweak some of the scenes, that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's what I'm working on. So now let's go ahead and get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer Corey Mandell. Here is the interview.
Welcome back, Corey, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So I think you're the first person to be on the podcast 3 times, so congratulations on that honor.
Do I get a prize?
You do get another interview. So we've had 2 lengthy discussions before, so mostly about feature film writing. So I'm going to refer people to those episodes as episode number 49 and 78. So today I think we're going to dig into TV writing. You made a comment to me on one of the prior episodes that you would definitely see a trend where more and more writers were bringing TV scripts into your workshops. And you just made a comment before we started that you thought maybe 80% of the working writers who attend your workshops are working in television. So I think it's definitely something that people should, if you're writing features, you should maybe consider getting into TV as well. But maybe we can talk through some of the sort of the steps that someone would take to writing and breaking into TV script writing. So maybe the first thing you can talk about is just what are people writing mostly? Are they writing pilot specs for original series? Are they writing specs based on already existing shows?
Great question. And before I answer, just to backtrack to something you just said, Ashley, which is I have a lot of students and clients who love features, and that is where their heart is, and that's where they want to be working. But they are working TV as their day job. So they are working TV writers making good money, and then at nights or on weekends, they're indulging in their feature fix. So I see a lot of that where feature writers are supporting themselves in TV. To go to your question about what they're writing, so one of the things, and I actually find it a little heartbreaking, is that how much misinformation is out there. The TV industry is a fast-moving industry, and we can get into it, but there's a lot of forces that are reshaping what they're doing and how they're doing it. But a lot of the classes and books were like written for a reality that, is 3, 5, 7 years or more older. So to specifically answer your question, like nobody is reading specs of existing shows anymore. And I see writers spending lots of time and energy pouring heart and soul into writing specs of existing TV shows. Mm-hmm. No one reads those. It's just nobody cares about that anymore. Huh. Everything in TV is original. So I recently had lunch with a showrunner, and what he said is, so when you get hired, and so maybe just to back up, since I know a lot of your listeners may be more feature savvy than TV savvy, just so everyone's up to speed and on the same page. There's 2 principal ways to make your money as a TV writer. One is to work on an existing show. So you'll probably start out as a staff writer, and then you can work your way up to script supervisor, executive producer, and such. And ultimately, the highest place is the showrunner, the person who creates the show and actually runs the show. So you are staffed and working on an existing TV show. The other way to make your living is to sell original material to spec and or pitch, although lately we see a large movement towards specs over pitches. But so you create a pilot and an idea and an engine for a TV show, and then you sell that. And obviously, what you hope most is that it ultimately goes to series and becomes an actual TV show. But even if it doesn't, you're going to be paid good money to sell that show, and you'll probably get notes and have to do a rewrite. So there's 2 main ways you make income. You work on an existing show and or you create something original. Showrunners, people who run shows, they're the ones principally in charge of hiring staff writers. So if you want to go that first route, the showrunner, who basically are producing the show, they're the ones probably who will be giving you that opportunity by hiring you. What I'm hearing more and more from showrunners is if you can write a pitch perfect, authentic pilot, you can write something we've never seen before with amazing characters and an amazing story, you're a great writer. And if you're a great writer, you can absolutely write in someone else's voice. Because obviously if you get staffed on a TV show, so a student of mine just got staffed on Jane the Virgin. So obviously she's going to be writing in the voice of that show and in the voice of those characters and writing the way that show does their stories, the rhythm, the pacing, and just the way they construct their stories. So obviously that's what she's now going to be doing. So, what showrunners will say is if you're a great writer, you can obviously write on anyone's show to anyone's voice. But if you can ape or mimic someone's voice, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a great writer. And at the end of the day, they want great writers. Because at the end of the day, their writing staff is the most valuable resource they have. And their writing staff is responsible for making the showrunner look brilliant. So if you were a showrunner, if I was a showrunner, we would obviously want to hire the best writers we could because they're the ones that are going to make our show and by extension ourselves, look brilliant. And in many ways, our success or lack of success is very much wrapped up in our writing staff. If you think about it from a feature film director's perspective, obviously casting is one of the most important decisions you make. If you have brilliant casting, making a brilliant movie becomes feasible. But if you have bad casting, it's basically impossible to overcome that. That's the way showrunners think about hiring staff writers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, the next sort of obvious question, though, is, if you're trying to get on, and maybe we could use this Jane the Virgin as a specific example. If you're trying to get on that show, obviously you would probably write something that's at least somewhat similar. It's not just writing something that's completely original and then they see it. I mean, they're going to want something. I've never seen Jane the Virgin, but I assume it's a comedy, and there's certain things that it is. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your spec script would probably need to hit those buttons.
I don't think as much as you might think. I would say they may be looking for some kind of, broad tonal targets. But even there, I think at the end of the day, they're looking for a script. So the way a lot of showrunners will talk about it is think about your script as an interview, which is to say, if I'm a showrunner and I read your script, I should get to know your voice, your sensibility, and sort of your special secret sauce as a writer, whatever that is. Now, yes, if my voice and my special secret sauce and who I am as a person is very, very comedic, probably the showrunner for, the Duffer Brothers, for Stranger Things are probably not going to be interested in me. But I don't think it's a good idea. And I hear managers say this all the time. I don't think it's a good idea to work outside in. I think you want to work inside out, which is to say, I don't think it's a good idea to say, oh, I'm a big fan of Jane the Virgin, or I'm a big fan of Stranger Things, or I'm a big fan of fill in the blank. What kind of spec script should I write that they'll be interested in? You can tell the writers that do that, and they're basically being ignored for the most part, as opposed to forget the marketplace. If someone just gave you a blank check and said, we're going to do whatever TV show you want to do, whatever that is, the one TV show you're most passionately excited about, go write that. Because that script is going to be the script that is the showcase for who you are as a writer and what you bring to the table. So, I can give you a million examples from my students who are getting staffed and launching careers, but here's a famous example with references your listeners will get, which is, Matthew Weiner or Weiner, I'm never quite sure how you pronounce it. He wrote a spec script for Mad Men. And he had very personal reasons to do it, and it was very close to his heart, and it was very much, the one TV show, if he could do a TV show, that he would want to do. And no one bought it. It was too dark, it was too New York, it was too iconoclastic, it was too whatever. It just wasn't connecting to the marketplace at that time. And so nobody bought it. But it was such a brilliant and authentic and original script. Like when you read that script, you don't say, oh, this is like a Jane the Virgin, or it's not like anything. It's like Mad Men. It just is. That's the authentic part of Pitch Perfect authentic. And so people wanted to meet this guy. People wanted to work with this guy. And David Chase, who's running The Sopranos, which is the center of the creative universe, or definitely the center of the TV universe, he has one slot left for a staff writer. He could literally hire anyone he wants. Like there probably aren't very many writers back then who didn't want to work on The Sopranos if you were in TV. Mm-hmm. And he hired this guy off the script. And David Chase said, like, I just never read a script like this. I never read those characters. I never read that world. And I wanted this guy's brilliance working for me. Because once you get hired on Sopranos, you're going to now write Sopranos characters and stuff. You're going to write in David Chase's tone. And that's your job, to support David Chase and the show. So he didn't need to see someone write mafia characters. He didn't need to see someone writing New Jersey characters. He just needed a script that blew him away, that stood out from all of the white noise of everyone else writing scripts. And when you read it, you really get a sense of this writer and his characters and what he's capable of doing. So, what I am constantly advising my clients and students is when you are writing spec TV scripts, don't think about the marketplace. Don't be thinking about a TV show. Don't be thinking about FX or Netflix or ABC. Literally, if you could write whatever TV show you wanted, that the one script that you're dying to write, that you're going to knock out of the park when it comes to characters and tone and story construction, and it's your passion script, write that script. And will it sell? Maybe, probably not. It's always about being in the right place at the right time. But don't listen to anyone who's giving you advice on what's selling and what the marketplace is, because I guarantee you what they're telling you is where the marketplace was 3 months ago, probably not where it is today. And even if you do have access, to someone who can tell you what's going on today, they can't tell you what's going on 2 or 3 months from now. Nobody has a crystal ball. And you can always tell the writer who's writing to the marketplace. And here's the other thing. After Breaking Bad comes out and becomes, or Game of Thrones or whatever phenomenal hit, or Stranger Things, I guarantee you in the next 6 months to a year, there's going to be so many Stranger Things type scripts being written. That's like the last thing you want to be doing, because that's what everybody's going to be doing. But if you just follow your heart and write the one script you most want to write, then it's always going to be unique, because nobody else can do that. But that's what showrunners are looking for. That's specifically what they're looking for. But of course, it's not just the one script that you could write that you want to write. You're going to have to knock it out of the park, and that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. So do you remember just specifically, that's a great example of, the guy getting hired on The Sopranos. Do you remember what sort of script this student wrote that got staffed on Jane the Virgin?
I don't, and it's a good problem to have, in so much as, I started my writing program, building these workshops about 3 or 4 years ago. And, it was pretty much a one-person show. Now I have teachers working with me and under me. But, up to about a year ago, actually, I knew every time someone in the program or from the program sold something or got staffed. It literally, in the last year, I honestly can't, I don't even know the total numbers. I've lost track. Just in the last week, and we're in August, this is the dead time for the industry. Just in the last week, I've gotten 3 emails from students or former students who have sold original material. I have gotten at least 3, and if not more, emails from people who've been hired to do assignments. Someone just got an overall deal at ABC, and that's just like in 1 week, in a dead time. So, and I don't have the greatest memory. So I can no longer keep up with all of the students who are selling stuff or getting staff, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. You said that it basically, when someone's trying to get into TV, it comes down to two things: either getting staff or potentially selling that spec pilot and having that get made. Are there any examples that you can think of a new writer actually selling a pilot, having it get made, and it turns into an established TV show? Or are the TV shows typically, when it's a new show, it's from someone with experience? Because I get a lot of people coming and asking that question, and I'm always like, listen, it's more about getting in as a staff writer and building a career that way, and eventually you'll get your shot at getting one of your pilots made, but it's very unlikely. And I can never think of any examples, so maybe there are some examples, and maybe you can just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, but I would say also, I think you conflated two things, which is there's selling original material, and then there is getting it made. So let's back up for a second. If we go back to the first golden age of television, and you had an original idea and as a pitch or spec, and you wanted to go sell it, you had three options: ABC, CBS, NBC. You had three buyers. And if they all said, Ashley, I love you, I love this project, it's just not for us right now, that's it. It's done. Today, if you have a great idea that you spec and or pitch, but probably spec, and you take it out to three buyers, and they all say, I love you, I love the project, it's just not for us, you still have at least 71 more places to go. There's 74 active buyers of original programming. And further, I'd like to share this with your listeners. The major complaint that you hear from the buyers is there's not enough great original material. When it is humorous or tragic, depending on how you want to look at it, when you listen to writers, on internet forums, somebody's a little dangerous, or at parties, like the big complaint you hear is it's so hard to get my stuff read, it's so hard to get an agent, it's so hard to sell something. Here's the reality. Almost every single really good writer is working. There's more TV shows being made right now than ever in the history of the world. And if you're a good writer or a great writer, you're working on a show. And if you're working on a show, you may not be speccing original material. So there's the really great writers and the established writers, for the most part, so if you're Vince Gilligan, you're not out selling a new show because you're working on Better Call Saul, and if you're Genji Cohen, you're probably not out setting up new stuff because you are knee-deep focused in Orange is the New Black, the next season, and so on and so forth. And so I recently spoke at a conference, and they had the president of FX, and she said something that I recently heard the president of HBO say, is that they're trying to get ahead of the game, and they're trying to find TV writers before they even necessarily know they are TV writers. So they're looking at blogs. They're looking at manuscripts of first-time novelists who haven't even been published yet. They're looking at playwrights. They're finding writers who they think really are amazing writers. They're bringing them into meetings. These writers might say, geez, I don't even have an idea for a TV show. I don't want to waste your time. And they're like, that's okay. Let's just have some conversations, and let's see if we can't help you figure out what might be a great TV show for you to create. So the buyers are literally meeting with prospective writers and helping the writers come up with something they can sell the buyers. Like that's crazy. That's unprecedented. We're not going to see that continue, forever. But my point being that you have all these writers complaining how hard it is to get stuff read, how hard it is to launch a career. But then you have the buyers complaining that we can't get enough great new material. The problem is most of these writers can't write to the level that the buyers require. But I have many students and friends who every year sell 1, 2, or 3 original ideas, either in spec form or pitch form, and none of them get made. And then the next year they sell 1, 2, or 3 ideas. Nothing gets made. And they've been doing this for 10, 12 years. And so each year they might make, between $75,000 and $400,000, depending on what the buying price is and if they sold 1, 2, or 3. But here's the thing, they're out selling them in the summer. Then they'll do a rewrite, September or October. And then by early November, they'll know if it's going to be made as a pilot and potentially get picked up as a TV show, or we're just not moving forward with it, which is often the case. They're just not going to move forward with it. So now we're talking about, $1, $2, $3, $400,000 for 5-6 months worth of work. And then the rest of the time they're working on their features and getting ready for the next TV season. So there are plenty of writers who make a good living selling original stuff that never actually gets made. Now, of course, you want it to get made creatively and financially. But my point being, in order to make a living, you don't need to be selling TV stuff, ideas, and projects that get made. That's awesome, but you can make a nice living just selling TV because they will develop lots of ideas and projects for everyone, that they make.
But using those examples that you just mentioned, this guy who's selling a few of these every year, correct me if I'm wrong, but he probably has a strong background in TV writing and has probably worked on the staff of at least a show or two.
Some yes, some no. Again, remember, these buyers are aggressively complaining that they can't find enough great new material. Because the writers that you're talking about, the writers with that established background, they're probably an EP or above on a show, if not second in command, if not running their own shows. I mean, here's the other side of it. I know showrunners who have a budget to hire, let's say 7 staff writers, and they've only hired 6 because they can't find 7 writers that are at the level they need because everybody's working on shows. The crazy thing is there's never been a better or easier time to break into TV. So if someone is complaining about how hard it is to break into TV, chances are they're just not yet writing to the level they need to be writing to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about some actual sort of nuts and bolts of TV writing. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people make with writing their TV scripts?
So there's a lot of them. So let's go through some of them. So one of them is, in TV, you have to be absolutely amazing at both characters and story, especially for that original show. Now, I know there's TV shows on that have great characters, not always the greatest stories, or great stories, not always the greatest characters. But that's not the bar you need to be shooting at. Your original material, it's like your resume. It demonstrates what you're capable of. And if it's not at a certain level, nobody's going to care. And it's got to be at the highest level. So what I see is, writers are really great with characters, but their story structure isn't where it needs to be, or their story structure is amazing, but their characters aren't where they need to be. For those of you listening, if you're interested in that, I would go to my website, CoreyMandell.net, and my blogs. There's a whole thing on creative integration, which is really the process and the training that writers can go through to have their best possible characters and their best possible story. So that's at CoreyMandell.net. So I think, being able to write amazing characters and amazing story is absolutely essential. I also think a really big mistake that writers will make is they don't understand story engines. So when you sell something to a buyer, network or cable or streaming like Netflix or Amazon, whomever, yes, you're going to have amazing characters that people want to spend week in and week out with. Yes, you're going to need to have a really great, compelling pilot concept and execution. Yes, you're selling probably an original world that people want to spend time in, but none of that's a TV show. What makes all of that a TV show is the engine. It's what makes the show have legs. It's what allows you to get 30, 40, 50, 100, or hundreds of episodes. And one of the things you see, especially with feature writers who are trying to make the transition to TV, is they're so hyper-focused on the pilot, they don't understand what an engine is. They don't understand that ultimately people aren't buying pilots, they're buying TV shows. Mm-hmm. And so understanding story engine is something that's really, really absolutely important for people that are working in TV. And then the third thing that I would say is, and it kind of goes back to where we started our conversation, is we can divide all scripts, let's say, into 3 broad categories. Paradigm driven, or another word for that would be formula driven. So someone who writes a TV show, a pilot script, and, if you're following any kind of template that says, first commercial break here, second commercial break here, but this is what happens at the commercial breaks, or A story or B story, and it gives you any kind of paradigm to follow, that we'll put into one category, and we'll call that paradigm driven. The second category is imitative. So, you love a particular show, Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, Veep, Jane the Virgin, whatever. There's a way they tell their stories. And so you can imitate the way that you could do your version of Stranger Things, so your version of Jane the Virgin. We saw a lot of people do their version of Game of Thrones. It's like, you read it and it's kind of like Game of Thrones, but it's different. So that would be imitative, where you're not necessarily following a paint by number paradigm, but you are imitating the way a really successful show puts their stories together. So that'd be the second category. The third category would be pitch perfect, authentic. And now we're talking about a script that is completely non-paradigm formula, template driven, and doesn't imitate anything. So, if you look at Orange is the New Black, or even Stranger Things, or Mad Men, or we could go on and on and on. Game of Thrones, when you look at those pilot scripts, it's a unique world. It is unique characters we've never seen before, but it's also a unique story. The stories are put together differently. When you read those scripts, you don't say, oh yeah, this reminds me of this. So when you read Orange is the New Black, you don't go, oh yeah, it's kind of this meets this, or it's kind of this kind of a show. Or Transparent. No, when you read the Transparent pilot, you're like, this is like Transparent. Mad Men pilot is like Mad Men. Orange is the New Black is like Orange is the New Black. For better or worse, it is a singular, unique experience when you read that pilot. So we have three categories: paradigm/formula driven, imitative, and then the third category would be pitch perfect, authentic. The biggest mistake that writers make, and this isn't coming from me, this is coming from managers and agents that I talk to on a regular basis or I bring into my classes. And the biggest mistake that people are making is they're writing paradigm-driven scripts or they're writing imitative scripts as opposed to pitch perfect, authentic. If we go back 5 years, 7 years, 12 years, you see the marketplace buying a lot of paradigm-driven scripts. You see the marketplace buying a lot of imitative scripts. You don't see the marketplace buying a lot of original pitch perfect, authentic scripts. HBO's doing it. Showtime was doing it. That was pretty much it, 12 years ago. 6 years ago, we see AMC and FX and some other buyers. But now, today, the good majority of scripts that are being bought are pitch perfect, authentic. Everyone's chasing that 18 to 48, 18 to 49 demographic. They're not watching. They all have access to on-demand video platforms like Amazon and Netflix and such. They know what's original versus what's a reheat, redo. They know, and they want stuff that's original. The audience for a lot of this formula driven stuff is people who are well past their peak earning years and are starting to die off, to be candid. So there's a growing demand for shows, for pilots and TV shows where we're like, okay, that is an original world. That is original characters, and the stories are told in an original way. And the other thing that I would point out to your listeners is that when you look at, because we do see paradigm-driven shows being bought and made, and we do see imitative shows being bought and made. It's not like that's completely non-existent, but this is the key that a lot of people don't understand, is look at who sells those scripts. It'll always be someone with an established track record at EP or above in that genre. So for instance, just as an example, I've had plenty of manager agents in the last year come into my classes and say, if you're writing a 3-camera comedy, sort of your basic cold open joke commercial, that sort of, if we look at 3-camera comedies, it's the same structure. It's just different jokes and different characters, but it's basically the same structure. Same thing with a lot of family dramas or criminal procedurals. If you look at the new when you look at projects that are being sold, it will always be someone who's an EP or above. So if you don't have that street cred, your project is DOA. I mean, probably no one's even going to read it. I don't care how great it is, no one's going to read it. So unless you have major street credibility in a certain genre, which is like EP or above on a recent hit show, you need to be writing something that is brand new and original and not following a formula, not imitating an existing show. And unfortunately, a lot of writers are making that mistake because they were educated 3 years ago or 5 years ago and it was a different reality than it is now. So that's really important. And then the last point I would make, and sorry for talking so much, but I think this will be exciting to your listeners, is the other reason that's so important is the other reason why agents and managers only want to represent writers that can do it is if you write a script like that, it can change your life because a big thing that's going on now is packaging. So if you look at a show, for instance, like The Nick as an example, or True Detective, and there's plenty more examples in the pipeline, what'll happen is if you can write a script like that, your management company or your agency can package it with actors, a director. Now they go out to the marketplace with a package. It's not a spec script that you can buy and develop and give us notes and then decide if you want to make it or not. No. This is a TV show. You commit to making the show or not making the show. And the reason that's so important is if you're buying The Nick and you don't, for some reason, want Steven Soderbergh attached as the director or Clive Owen as the star, then don't buy it because that's non-negotiable. Same thing with the writers. So you have two writers who I believe had never run a show before, and now they're the showrunners. And if you don't want that, then don't buy the package because that's now part of the package. And that is a life-changing event for the writer. Not just from a monetary point of view, but you can literally become a showrunner in very short order. And that's really exciting.
Yeah. Now, would your advice change even slightly if someone's goal is to get a job as a staff writer? Would you say maybe they would be better off writing the script as the paradigm driven as opposed to the authentic?
No, absolutely not. Because again, showrunners are looking for the best writers possible, and it's not that impressive to follow the paradigm. And what I've heard repeatedly from management companies and from showrunners is we just don't even look at those scripts. So that's why I started by saying it's heartbreaking because there's really smart, passionate writers out there who are pouring heart and soul in writing scripts that no matter how good they are, how outstanding they are, they just get ignored because they don't understand. Because the information of what they think they're supposed to be doing is 3 to 5 years old. It just isn't what's going on out there right now. So I would say this. I have seen in the last year, two of my students, one student and client sell original material get staffed on something that was paradigm driven and 100 who didn't. So is it impossible? No. But you're really shooting yourself in the foot. And the thing is, it's a lot easier to write a paradigm-driven script or an imitative script than it is to write something pitch-perfect, authentic. That's why I believe you see so many buyers complaining that they can't get enough material because the kinds of material that they need and are looking for, it's the hardest to write. And it takes the most training. Because it's obviously easier to structure a script by following a paint-by-number paradigm than to say, so what I heard Michael Lombardo, the way he described it, who runs HBO, is we're looking for elevated material, which is to say, what is the best way to structure your story to tell what you're trying to tell? That's what we're looking for. So when you read these scripts, it's so organic moment to moment, and it's just structured in the way that is unique to telling that story. So if you really break down and study Breaking Bad or Orange is the New Black or Transparent or a whole host of projects, they're all done differently. They have their own unique way of telling their stories based on what experience they want from the viewer. But none of them are following, I had a writer just recently who booked a consultation, and she's an amazing writer. She can't get any traction. And you read her script, and it just feels like a formula. And it's literally, there's a crisis point that happens right before the first commercial act. Then there's the complication at this commercial act. Like, I know exactly everything that's going to happen in her script. I know it's going to happen at the midpoint. I know it's going to happen at the end, because that's, she worked with this popular teacher, and that's what that teacher taught. So then I just gave her, 40 scripts that have recently sold that are in that genre. And I said, go look through those 40 scripts and tell me how many of them follow the paradigm that you are forcing your script to follow. And she's like, none of them. And then she's like, so why the heck am I, she used stronger language than that. I'm not sure the language is appropriate. But she said, why the heck am I forcing my script to follow that paradigm? And I'm like, that's a really good question. Why are you doing that? And, there's obviously answers, but she stopped doing it. So It's just not where the marketplace is. It's where it was 5 years ago. It's not where it is today. And it's not where it's moving toward. Everyone is trying to build libraries of original programming, and they want brand names. So, Girls is a polarizing show. There are people that love it, and there are people that hate it. And it's not going to be the most popular show, and people aren't interested in the largest demographics. They're looking for passionate brand names. And Girls is a brand name. If you're a fan of Girls, you're going to follow and watch it, and it's going to mean something to you. It has it's not just generic TV. It's not just another show that you're passing time on. It's a show that matters to you. That's what people are looking for, because if you can have a library of that, it's going to be imperative, because, TV, internet, all this is converging. No one exactly knows what the new world order is going to look like, but really smart people have been saying for years now that if you want to be a major player, you're going to have to own a library of original content. So we're seeing a lot of mergers. We're seeing a lot of people buying players that have content so they can own it. And we see people, it's not an accident that Netflix and Amazon, I believe respectively, are doubling their production budgets from an already astronomical number. And HBO and FX and others are complaining that they can't get enough original programming. And it's not an accident that we even see the networks moving aggressively into the space. So if you look at a show like Last Man on Earth, 7 years ago, probably even 5 years ago, that's not a network show. That's a HBO, Showtime, FX, AMC. It's just not a network show. And we're seeing networks aggressively getting into the space. I've heard executives at HBO and FX and AMC complain because now they're not just competing with themselves in that marketplace. They're now competing with the networks. So sorry to sound like a broken record, but all roads lead back to learning how to write pitch perfect, authentic scripts. And it's the hardest thing to do. It takes the most training. And that is why we see this weird imbalance where we have all of these writers saying, I so much desperately want to be working in TV, selling original material, getting staff, but it's just impossible. No one will pay attention to me, or no one's buying my scripts. It's so hard to break in. And on the other side of the aisle, we see showrunners saying, I've got a budget for 7 writers, but I've only hired 6. I can't find a 7th writer. And we see the buyers saying, we're in trouble because we can't buy enough great material, because everyone capable of writing that material, they're all working on shows because there's just so much TV being made. So we have this weird disconnect because most writers can't write the kinds of scripts that the marketplace needs right now. It would almost be like, if suddenly there was a new computer programming language for virtual reality or something, I don't know, and Google and everyone, Apple, they need engineers who can program in this new language. And you have all these engineers out there with great experience, but they can't program in that language, and they keep going to job interviews and they can't get hired. And they're like, it's impossible to get a job. No one's hiring. And Google and Apple are saying, we can't find enough qualified engineers. That's what's going on right now. It's just what makes you qualified is the goal. It's simple, but it's not easy to do. A world we've never seen before, characters we've never seen before, a story that's told in a way, that's unique and devise for your show and the experience you're trying to create with a story engine. And the thing is, you got to do all of it. If you can do some of it, but you're weak in other areas, you're just not of interest to these people, because, you know, the showrunners and the buyers, they want someone that can do all of it. And that's really difficult, and there aren't that many people who can do it. But the good news is, for the people who train themselves to be able to do it, they're going to have a career. They're going to be in demand. I have students who nobody heard of, who have no track record, and a year later, they have multiple suitors. Like, people are fighting for them because they're able to write at the level that TV requires. I've had 2 students recently just get overall deals, and for your listeners who aren't sure, you know, for your feature writers who are like, what is that? An overall deal then is a sweet gig. It's, you know, ABC comes to you and they say, we'll give you an office, we'll give you an assistant, we'll give you a parking space, and we'll give you, I don't know, let's say $400,000, let's say $200,000 a year for the next year. So we're going to guarantee you $400,000 over 2 years, and you have an office and an assistant, and you're going to come up with ideas for a TV show, just like you would be doing on your own. The only difference is those ideas have to come to us. Either come to us first, which is a first look deal, or to be exclusive, where it's just to us. And if you set up a show and it gets made, you'll get all that extra money. If at the end of 2 years, you don't come up with a single thing that we like, and we don't buy a single idea that you came up with, you still got the $400,000. So we're basically going to give you $200,000 a year, or whatever the number is, to come up with ideas for TV shows. And if you go back 5 years or 7 years, the only people who are getting those deals are people who set up hit shows. And maybe getting a lot more money than that, you know, millions. But generally, you only get an overall deal if you have a proven track record. I see people, in fact, for your listeners, I have who's a friend, but he started as a student. He's a feature guy, and he just got an overall deal with very good money, and to not only write, but he would be writing and directing the pilots because they really like his directing style. And he's a feature guy who had no background in TV. He did a short film and then coupled that with an amazing pilot script. And when they saw that film, they're like, wow, you can do really interesting visual work for not a lot of money, which is always helpful in TV. And your pilot script that, you know, I helped this guy develop, they're like, that is the kind of writing that we're looking for. Put the two together. They gave him an overall deal, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's talk about Script to Career for a little bit.
Sure.
That's it's a 2-day seminar here in Los Angeles with Tom Noonan is going to be the I guess co-speaker on that. Maybe you can just talk. It's October 8th to 9th, and it's at Haynes Hall on the UCLA campus. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that and what you're going to be talking on.
Yeah, so Tom and I are going to co-teach this weekend. To the best of our knowledge, no one's done anything like this before. We're excited to do it. It's going to be, we're going to be working a lot and talking and helping people really understand, for instance, story engines. That's such a critical part of the TV if you're going to sell a pilot. So what exactly is a story engine, and how do you go about constructing it? What are the questions you can use? And we'll give plenty of examples. So we'll do a whole module on story engines. We'll do a whole module on creative integration, which is how you can have your best characters and your best story. I'll do a whole module on pitch perfect authentic, really breaking it down, really taking the time to get people to understand what's required and how to get there. And then, so I'll be responsible for really empowering people with the information on what are the kinds of scripts, both in TV and features, that are required to really stand out and launch a career, and breaking down the tools and the skills that are required and how you can train yourself to get there. And then Tom's going to talk over the weekend and really help people on how to get a career, because one of the big mistakes that people make is they think, okay, I write, I then get an agent, the agent helps me get a career. And the reality is most people, they get their first job, which then gets them their agent. So the game isn't to get an agent. The game is to have proof of concept. And there's two ways of having proof of concept. One is in your writing, and the other is that the marketplace, because of your writing, you get a staff writing job, or you set something up, or you sell something. And a lot of people are like, well, that's impossible if I don't have an agent, and that's just not true. So So Tom's going to be talking a lot about, well, first of all, starting with helping people figure out what kind of career they want. And that's so important. And we could do a whole podcast on that. I wish I had someone like Tom in my life back when I started out, because honestly, I was just focused on selling something and proving that I could do this. I never stopped to really put the work in to figure out what kind of career I wanted, what kind of life I wanted as a writer, and then backtracking to what I should be doing to line myself up with that kind of career. So I had a career and I made a lot of money, but it wasn't the career I wanted. And it's a lot harder to turn that thing around once you get going than before you get going. So first of all, Tom will help people and help give them the tools and the questions they need to be asking to really figure out what kind of career they want, and then how to backtrack to have a strategic plan to get there, and then focusing on how you get your first job. So in a sense, my responsibility in the weekend will be to help people understand what is required on the writing front and what's required to get your writing to the level that's necessary in the current marketplace to have a career. And then Tom will be working with, okay, once you are at that level as a writer, how do you go get that career? How do you go get that first job? And it won't be just me talking. I mean, we'll be intermixing the modules, and we'll do a lot of joint Q&A, and we'll work with people, on specific script issues or specific career issues. Someone who's just not able to get the traction and what they can do about it. So, and both of these, our philosophy is both of these parts, the career and the creative, should be integrated. So the more you understand the marketplace, the more you understand how you go about getting a job without an agent and career building. I think the more you understand that, the more empowered you're going to be in knowing what kinds of scripts to be writing and what kind of creative training you need to be doing, and vice versa. The more you understand the creative training and the kind of scripts you need to be writing, I think that'll help you understand the marketplace and how to navigate it. So I think getting all of this integrated in a weekend, I think it's going to be really cool. We've never done it before. I've been teaching for well over a decade. Tom has been teaching for well over a decade at UCLA in the producers program, and I know you're going to have him as a guest. And the track record of success from the students is really inspiring. So we'll be joining forces in October, and I think you just gave the dates. I'm pulling them up. October 8th and 9th. Yep. And we have a really we have a $100 off discount offer for your listeners, because we love your listeners, and it is SYS 16. So SYS, sell your screenplay, SYS 16. And if you use that as a discount code, you'll get $100 off. And I believe that expires the end of September, or actually I think October 1st. So I think as long as you do it before October 1st, that discount will work. And you can go to script. Yeah, I'm sorry?
I'll put that in the show notes too, so people have that. And I will round up the link as well, so people can get the actual link to purchase the class.
Yeah, and just in case, for those listening, it's script2career.com, and that TO is spelled out. So script2career, one word.com.
Perfect. As I said, I'll put that in the show notes. So I always like to just finish these interviews up by asking the guest how people can follow along with what you're doing. If you have a blog, a Facebook page, a Twitter handle, anything you feel comfortable sharing, just so people can keep up with what you're doing.
Yeah. So CoreyMandell.net, CoreyMandell.net. And I do workshops training people on creative integration, story engines, and story mapping and execution on their pilots and features. Really, it's just awesome to see the success that we're now seeing from students. So you can go to CoreyMandell.net, you can see the workshops, you could see the alumni success, and then you can go to my blog where there's a lot of free, free information, like on creative integration and story engines and such. So you could check all that out at CoreyMandell.net.
Perfect. Sounds good, Corey. Well, it's always a pleasure talking with you. I wish you luck with this seminar, and I'm sure I'll have you on again in the future.
I very much look forward to it. Thanks for having me on, Ashley.
Thank you, Corey. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get high-quality professional notes on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the one who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features and television scripts. We can also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own screenplays, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Ben Chrisimon. He's a director and screenwriter who recently shot his second feature film, a mystery thriller called Sunchoke. Ben started out, as many of my guests have, by just going out and shooting his own micro-budget feature film, and then things slowly snowballed from there. So he really describes that process and kind of how he got to the point where now he's directing this second feature film. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Corey. There's a lot of great stuff in the interview today. If you're looking to break into television writing, I think this is a great episode to listen to. As I mentioned, Corey has been on the show 2 previous times. I highly recommend those episodes as well. I think they will add quite a bit of context to the discussion we had today. So I will link to those in the show notes if you want to check those out. Also, if you want to attend the Script to Career event, you can go to the Script to Career website, and I will link to that in the show notes. And you can use the coupon code SYS16 for a $100 discount. Again, that's SYS16 for a $100 discount. The Script to Career event is Saturday and Sunday, October 8th and 9th, 2016. It's on the UCLA campus. Again, all that stuff I will link to in the show notes and the coupon code as well, so you don't have to scribble it down real quick, but it is SYS16 and it will give you a $100 discount. Again, just check out the show notes and you can find that information. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.